Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Cliff Yates Show, and we are on take two, even though we were live. I guess I was muted for the first minute or two of the broadcast. And so anyways, thanks for having this conversation with me here. And if you're listening on the playback, maybe on one of the podcast platforms, really welcome. But here to my fellow Americans, my fellow patriots, we are standing up for what is right. But listen, if you're listening on the playback or watching on YouTube anywhere in the world, because I know people are watching us still as the beacon of freedom around the world. They're watching what we're doing, what is happening here in America. So it's very important that everybody's paying attention, not just us patriots, us American citizens, to what's going on. So yeah, I was muted. And so that's what happens when you go live, right? I was muted, so I'm actually starting over. And then once this is uploaded, I will be doing a little bit of editing on the secondary version. But as we're live, and now I'm no longer muted. So if you're checking in, you can hear me. I welcome all comments, and I will respond to them. But as a focus of the channel, mostly focused on health, wealth, positivity, motivation, inspiration, and how we can, through personal growth, be a better person each and every day, and therefore have a positive impact on other people. What does that have to do with the State of the Union and what's going on in America today? Why does that tie in? And I'm going to tell you why that ties in. It ties in because as individuals, when we get leverage on ourselves, when we get pissed off, we're not going to take this anymore. We need to make a big change. No more. We've had enough. That's it. If you've ever gotten to that point and now you're at a pain point in your life when you say, no, I'm taking the action that I know I need to take. I am going to the seminars. I am reading the books. I am changing how I'm thinking. I'm changing what I'm doing. When you get to that point as an individual, that's when we make great positive changes. And now, I believe as a country, we are to that point. We are to that pain point, that pissed off point. We have people now saying, no more. We're not going to have any more of this. No more of these open borders. No more of a lack of law and order. No more of immigration without any checks and balances. No more listening to mainstream media give us a line of BS. We are going to be more discerning of the information that we're taking in, what is true and what is not. And so that's how that personal growth aspect of mentality and inspiration can tie into us as citizens and us as a country, because we do need to come together. At least a portion of us that have certain values and principles are saying, wait a minute, no more. What is this happening? No more. Somebody has to be saying no. No more men competing in women's sports. No. Who is there to say no? And we are now going to have to say no. And a lot of us, myself included, brought up, we're very respectful. We have conservative principles, and we let the government do their job. We are not political animals, so we let the politicians handle that. And now we're at a point where we can no longer hide in the background or stay in the background and let other people do what they're doing without us standing up for what we believe and discern what is actually true and what is not true. So we're going to talk about today, we're going to hit the open borders and what's going on there. Is it real? Of course it's real. We've had people go there with cameras so we can really say, at first, are they skewing the reporting? No, we've had people go there. We've had people go there and say, this is what's happening. We've had mayors, we've had governors saying, oh, okay, we are getting bombasted. We are getting slammed down here with the rush of immigrants coming in here unchecked. And so we are not sanctuary cities. And so you're a sanctuary city in New York. You're a sanctuary city in LA and San Francisco. We will ship these people to you. You say welcome. And so we're going to make every city in America a border city that's a sanctuary city, and that's what's been happening. And you know what that's done? That has brought to light the actual problem and how serious it is. And we've had mayors around the country, governors around the country at different cities say, wait a minute, we got to pay attention to this because now we're getting hit with this. So we're going to talk about that, and I got some video clips that we're going to talk about today, and law and order and the lack thereof. We're going to hit that. Safety in America. The federal government, that's one of their main jobs, as I research what they're supposed to be doing. That's keep the country safe. They're not doing it. We see they're not doing it. Where they're sending money overseas, billions of dollars to countries so far away from us that we're saying, wait a minute, you're spending a lot of money for tanks and guns to protect someone else's border, and you're not doing your job in protecting ours. Citizens and patriots of America are saying no more. We say no. What can we do about it? Well, we're going to do whatever we can do about it. And we're going to start with how we vote, not only with our ballots, but also with our feet. It's already been taking place for the last 2 or 3 years. We're going to talk about the Cuban mayor. We're going to talk about Mr. Francis Suarez. If you remember him, he ran for president for a little while, and then he decided it's not going to happen. So we're going to talk about Mr. Suarez, what he's doing there in Miami. He's doing some crazy good things in Miami that I think, and, well, mayors around the country and governors really should model what he's doing, and maybe they could get the same results, but apparently, maybe they don't want to. And we're going to talk about the foreign funding into the universities and what's happening there. That's been going on for decades now, and it's just coming to light. People have written about this. In 2006, a young lady, Bridget Gabrielle, she wrote about this in her book, Rise, and she wrote about what's happening on university campuses on the foreign money from Islamic groups from around the world and how they're pouring billions of dollars into universities and campuses to push their propaganda to the students. And now we're seeing that play out again right now in all of these demonstrations that are going on, that we also say, no, that is not free speech. Free speech ends when laws start being broken, windows, defacing property, preventing the free use of campuses by paying students. They have a right to have equal access to the universities that are being blocked. We're going to talk about the Darien Gap and what's going on there, how that's an area where people are funneling up into the United States. And well, I've got a video clip from the Sean Ryan podcast, and he has an ex-CIA operative, Navy SEAL. This guy is an amazing patriot who's been down in the Darien Gap numerous times. He's developed relationships with the Indian groups down there, and he knows what's happening, and he's reporting on what's happening. And so we need to be aware of that. And I want to make reference to also what's going on. It is National Police Week, and we want to recognize our heroes in blue, our men and women, and the attack, the defamation of our police society has been a catastrophe. And so that's not to excuse any malfeasance by any officer, but to the attack on the profession and as a whole is terrible. We're saying no more as citizens, patriots. We are saying no more. And let's look at a little bit. The Rubin Report is a YouTube channel that I checked into, was watching. That's where I saw Mayor Suarez, and I just love what he was saying about the homeless and what he's been doing down there in Miami, which could be a model for everywhere in the country. If you look at the numbers to certain catastrophic cities like San Francisco, New York, and Los Angeles, the mayor, I had to check into some of these stats because he said from 10 years ago, 9,000 homeless down to 600 homeless in Miami proper, the city of Miami. And Miami-Dade as a whole, 1,000 homeless. How can that be true? But it is true. I checked the stats. I also, and we're gonna allude to the murders that have occurred in Miami in 2023. I had to check this out. He said 31 murders for the year of 2023. Now, as I said when I was muted earlier, we have to be very discerning with the statistics out of Miami, because you have Miami proper as a whole. The city of Miami as a whole is different than Miami Beach. Miami Beach is a separate city in and of itself. They have a separate mayor. And then you have Metro Miami-Dade as a whole. So we have the city of Miami, population probably 450,000 plus, and then maybe Miami-Dade as a whole, 2-3 million people. So you've got to, sometimes the statistics can be skewed a little bit if we don't pay attention to what we're talking about, because a lot of times shootings or spring break things will happen or demonstrations will happen that are happening in Miami Beach, it will be attributed to actually the city of Miami, which is not really the case. That is a separate entity themselves. However, they work together. And just like this year, they came together to break spring break, right? And everything went smoothly because they all got together. They had state troopers come into Miami Beach, and they had a coalition of law enforcement there to make sure that everybody that did come to Miami Beach for spring break were safe and had fun, and people didn't get hurt. And let's listen to a little bit of Mayor Suarez. I mean, what he does is just crazy what he's doing. I think it's amazing.
And you texted me while I was live on air to say, Dave, we've got about 600 homeless people in Miami and I'm working on it. And I thought, man, not only the guy gets it, but so first off, 600. Now I think if I'm not mistaken, in San Francisco, there's about 30,000, about 40,000 in LA, but LA is much more sprawling. That's why San Francisco, it seems so dense. But so what do we have now? I think you told me right before. What did you
so
say?
I have 630.
630
as of the
630 now.
Census. So we used to be as a community, and let me break it down a little bit for you so people understand, because there's always a lot of confusion. So there's City of Miami proper. City of Miami proper has approximately, this is an approximation based on the census, 500,000 to 600,000 people, approximately. The metropolitan area, which is called Miami-Dade County, they use the same name just to confuse everybody, right? Is about 2.8 million people. So we're a little bit more than a fifth of the population. In terms of homelessness, prior to the enactment of what they call the Homeless Trust, which I'll talk about, there was about 9,000 homeless in our community, 9,000. The Homeless Trust enacted a 1% tax on the sale of food and beverage in certain municipalities, and that generates about $50 million a year. They created with that a center of homeless assistance centers, which provide housing, mental health, treatment, drug addiction, counseling, and vocational training. That reduced homelessness by 90%. So we went from 9,000 to about 900. Maybe 1,000.
How long did that take?
It took about 10 years. So we're now at the 900 to 1,000 countywide, 60% of which unfortunately are in the city because we're the urban population center, right? So 630. So I've just identified, and I created something called Functional Zero. So I went to the community of care providers and said, hey guys, blank check, what is it going to take to get to zero? And I was like, nobody's ever actually tried to do that. You know what I mean? No one's actually even had that as a goal.
Right.
And I actually had people, really important people, frankly, tell me, don't say it out loud. Like, don't do it. And I said, guys, we're never going to get to the goal if we don't articulate the goal and if we don't challenge ourselves, even at the risk of seeming foolish, right? And so we created a plan. And now I'm doing for the first time ever, June 1st. I think it's actually the first time I'm announcing this. So this is actually breaking news, if you will. June 1st, I'll have the first mayor's ball to end homelessness. I want to be the first major American city to end homelessness. And I'm going to tell you why.
Isn't that amazing? He wants to be the first mayor to end homelessness. This guy, and this is what he focuses on. He focuses on three things, and maybe we'll see it in part of the video, where he focuses on lower taxes, low taxes, keeping people safe, keeping people safe, safety, a lot of safety, and they are hot. They're on top of it. They're in Miami. Number 3, innovation. Be innovative in what they're trying to do. Paying attention to what's going on instead of being scared of AI, artificial intelligence. How can we use that in our city operations? Pretty amazing guy.
The obvious reason is because we care about the people who are in that state and we want them to be productive, contributing members of our community. That's important. Secondly, we know that it has an impact on people that are not homeless, right? If you're homeless, if you're not homeless and you're walking down the street, there's all kinds of unfortunate interactions that can happen that are not positive.
Okay, did you hear what he said? Because it affects the non-homeless. I can't tell you how much I can equate with that. First traveling to San Francisco some 25 years ago. Pretty nice time, pretty good time. But there was a few homeless around. Then a couple years later we went back, and we went to the theater, the Orpheum Theater in San Francisco, but it's in the what they call the Tenderloin District. So there's a lot of drug use, heroin addicts, and I can't tell you how many times we were accosted by the homeless, so aggressive, grabbing at you, trying to pull at you, and asking for money, really demanding. At one point, we said, "Hey, get away from us." These homeless were following us, yelling at us, and it did not even feel safe. Here I was, a police officer from Los Angeles, and going to San Francisco and want to enjoy all the great architecture and the trolley cars and the Fisherman's Wharf and everything else, and just from Union Square all the way down to Fisherman's Wharf, we're just getting bombarded with these homeless. And now in the recent years, you've just seen how they have an app where you can see where the homeless have defecated, so you don't have to step in it. And the last time we went to San Francisco was probably 10 years ago, and it was horrific. And I know now that it's got even worse. And so when you take care of the homeless, it's not only are you having empathy for the homeless and you're taking care of them, you're taking care of the people who are not homeless, who have paid tax money to enjoy freedom in the country, free use of our cities, towns, roads, countryside. And boy, he is on it, and we need people to really model what he's been doing.
And I think third, and this is to me arguably one of the most important reasons. There's, I think, a misconception that if you are pro-capitalism, pro-American free enterprise, you somehow don't care about people other than yourself. Mm-hmm. And I think that is bogus, and it's wrong, and it's not really representative of this country. If this country has demonstrated anything in the course of its history, is that it's compassionate, is that it's willing to sacrifice for ends and goals that are bigger than itself. And I think to me, it's such a ratification of who we are as a people if we can get out there and say, hey, we are.
And that's the propaganda that gets put out there. If you're a conservative, you're a Republican, you don't care about people. You have no empathy for people. And that's the propaganda that it seems the left has gone to an extreme place to try to propagandize that message when that couldn't be further from the truth. But of course, people are paying attention. They're waking up. They're not awoke to what's going on. And we need, as patriots and citizens, now we need to pay attention. And we can no longer, as most of us who grew up very respectful people, let the government do their job. They were elected to do it. We do our work, and we are good citizens. We don't have to be involved heavily in what's happening. But now we can no longer sit back and watch the shit show. We got to stand up as American citizens and patriots and say, wait a minute, no more of this. We are going to say no. That is enough. We have a pain point now. We have leverage on ourselves, and we're getting it. And boy, this mayor, Suarez, has it right. And that's why the quality of life is so good here in Florida itself. Now, there's some bad spots. Everywhere you go, there's going to be, bad areas. There's going to be places where crime is higher than it should be. But generally, when you come to Florida, you don't come here to mess around crime-wise. There's plenty of other places. There's plenty of other Soros-backed DAs that will allow you to run free and commit crimes with impunity, where here the governor has already fired a couple DAs and got them out of office that were Soros-backed. And so don't come down here, and that's the message he sends. Don't come down here with your crime. But Miami is doing an amazing job down there, and this Suarez is, I think he could be, he'll probably be running again in the future for president, and you can listen to what he has to say.
the first major American city to end homelessness, right? We don't just succeed, but we succeed while we care for those who are most unfortunate, who are having the roughest time, who some feel like are being left behind or being ignored. We're not going to ignore them. We see them, and we're going to take care of them, and we're going to help them take care of themselves.
So what do you do?
Frankly.
I mean, for these 630, I mean, it's not that many left.
It's not.
In some ways, we're sort of there in some sense of what
we're the top
could actually be.
The bottom 10%.
Yeah.
And I would say maybe the hardest 10%, right? Chronically homeless.
Right.
And so this is what I would say. One is most models that talk about housing, if you can get a homeless into housing, there's a 90+% chance that they will not go back. The problem has always been building enough housing. Mm-hmm. So I identified an organization called Hermanos de la Calle, which has been in business and operating for 8 years. They're a multi-million-dollar budgeted organization. And what they do is they find already existing homes and they place them there and they give them wraparound.
That's just one thing that he's doing for homeless, and he pays attention to the crime. He even talks later about, and check that out on the Rubin Report, where they had like 70 Palestinian protesters, and they had jumped onto A1A, which is a state highway, and they immediately went in with the state troopers along with themselves, and they were arrested, taken off the highway because they were interfering with the free use of citizens of the roadway. And we cannot have that, and we are not going to put up with that. Let's talk about, listen, this is, it seems to most of us, what the hell's going on in these universities? How can all these people, when I was growing up, I never knew anything about hatred for Jews. I never heard about it. I never heard about, these wars. And it's hard for me to believe, and it was hard for me to believe, that these can't be our citizen kids. And I guess there probably is quite a few, but they've been indoctrinated and propagandized by these universities. I come to find out, because now we do have to pay attention. We have to learn a little bit. Hey, why is this happening? This is something that is so foreign to us. And come to find out, for years, Qatar, these Islamist countries, have been feeding money into these universities, putting their own professors in place, right? Funding their own Muslim student associations. They're infiltrating to try to, churn up and it's a choreographed effort. All of these, which I can't even. Most people cannot even. How can these people be protesting for people that went in and murdered kids in Israel and cut people's heads off and did all these things, and now they're protesting in favor of them, and it's just hard to believe. But Mark Levin brought up some great things on foreign funding, and let's listen to a little bit of that, because he kind of pulls back the curtain on why a lot of this is happening.
It says foreign nations have donated $43 billion to American universities since 1990. $43 billion. Well, what are they buying? Well, we know what they're buying. Minds, hearts, and souls. The Department of Education published a report in October 2020 that highlighted funding from foreign adversaries was massively underreported, quote unquote. The Trump administration was trying to get its hands around this, not the current administration. And it highlighted funding from foreign adversaries. The conclusions were drawn from investigations into the underreporting of millions of dollars worth of gifts and contracts from communist China, fascistic Russia, Saudi Arabia, and Qatar at 12 prestigious American universities. According to a recent study, higher levels of campus anti-Semitism and a decline in free speech norms are associated with this unreported foreign funding of American universities from authoritarian governments. An astounding 300% increase in anti-Semitism at U.S. universities has been linked to $13 billion in undisclosed foreign.
This is another example of why the The federal government is not doing their job. Get in there. Identify the people that are on student visas, and they are going to be out immediately. Who's here on a student visa? You are gone, because you cannot be doing this on a campus in America. You can't be calling for a genocide and the death to America. You cannot be doing that. It's not allowed. And if you're here on a foreign visa, student visa, it's gone, and so are you on the first plane out. We need to be doing that, and poor police officers around the country, because I talk to them, they're told they have to stand down in all these situations. And yet I see comments when they are finally able to go in after windows have been smashed out and everything has been defaced and a lot of damage has occurred. People have gotten hurt. They've set up these encampments, and then the police are allowed to go in, and then people are mad at the police. Seriously, you need to get a life, and you're not in tune with what most of us patriotic citizens believe and are going to put up with in the future. And so Mark has really pulled back the curtain on $43 billion that's gone into these schools.
Foreign funds from 2014 to 2019. The undisclosed donations have been made by governments in the Middle East, China, and Russia. Harvard, Yale, Georgetown, they were among the top recipients of concealed donations. According to the report, the majority of schools have business dealings with Huawei, a Chinese tech giant connected to the Chinese Communist Party. According to early findings, most of the 12 schools that they cite have had financial dealings with Huawei, the Chinese tech giant that some U.S. officials say is a threat to national security. And at least one had ties directly to the Chinese Communist Party. You would think they were all run by Hunter Biden. It goes on. Others had deals with Russian government and institutions in Saudi Arabia and Qatar. The 12 schools revealed $6.5 billion in foreign funding that had previously gone unreported after coming under federal scrutiny. A recent study found unreported foreign funding of U.S. universities from authoritarian governments is linked to higher levels of campus anti-Semitism and a decline in free speech norms. Unreported foreign funding of the U.S. universities by Qatar, that's key. The tiny little nothing nation. Oil was found.
Unreported funding, ladies and gentlemen. Unreported funding of these billions of dollars. Can you imagine if you've been had at an audit, if you've been audited like I have, and they go over every $10 meal, right, that you haven't reported, or that you reported and they're suspicious that it's not an actual business-related luncheon. And yet, look what's happening. Unreported funding of billions of dollars to these universities. No more. We're paying attention. And as citizens, we need to pay attention. Listen, I've been apolitical my whole life up until maybe a few years ago. Let's say paid more attention starting maybe 10 to 15 years ago. Listen, I was brought up, many of us who are brought up 50s and 60s, I was born in 57. So listen, we didn't even talk politics in my house. My dad was a Marine. My uncle was a Marine. And I was not brought up in the church, but yet I was probably preached to with godly principles every day by mom and dad, because they kept hammering home a few basic principles. Don't lie, be honest, hardworking, do the right thing in every situation, be respectful of everybody, and you're going to be rewarded for that. And so we didn't talk politics. Every once in a while, my dad would go off on a little tangent about the communists, but I never heard about Democrats or Republicans. Jerry Seinfeld talked about this in a recent video where he said, hey, listen, back in the day, Americans worked hard all day and they came home. They might have checked in with the news for 20 minutes, right? 15 minutes news, 10 minutes weather, sports, and then that was it. And then you knew you had 2 to 3 hours of laughter. And you had all in the family, whatever sitcom you were watching, right? Mork and Mindy, whatever it was you were watching, you had a couple hours of laughter that you were going to have before you went to bed, and the next day you went back off to work as a hardworking American citizen, patriot, and you had trust in the government. Of course, at that time, we had presidents like John F. Kennedy, who cared about the nation being healthy, who cared about the nation, and he was a Democrat who today would be considered probably right-wing. But that's how I was brought up. And even when I went to the when I went to the Livingston County Sheriff's Department in upstate New York, and all sheriffs are elected officials. No one ever verified that I was a Republican or a Democrat, or that I was registered, or that I had voted for the sheriff. No one had made sure of. And so people were, at that time, if you go back to the 70s, 80s, and maybe even into the 90s, politics was your business privately. That's why you went into the booth and you pulled the curtain, because that was your vote and it was private and no one else needed to know. And now everybody wants to know, and everybody thinks they need to know, and everybody assumes if you say anything in support of anybody, you're this, you're that, and you're labeled that. And so no longer, we've had people, I know my wife was in a biking group, and she was talking with somebody and said, "Oh, we can be good friends." And she said to my wife, "It depends. Are you a Trumpster or a Trump lover?" One of those things. Because if you are, we cannot be friends. Can you imagine? And that is happening to friends, family, and everywhere else in the country. And so stand by for what's coming down the pike. But before I lay that on you and get you really upset with me, let's go to the Sean Ryan podcast, because he had an operative who's been down to the Darien Gap, and that's where a lot of these folks are being funneled up. Chinese and people from all over South American countries and Europe and everywhere, Arab countries are coming into America. And now they're actually getting systems going so that we have Chinese arriving in the Darien Gap, and within 2 days, they're in New York. And New York's being flooded with these people. But listen to this operative who's been to the Darien Gap many times. He knows what's happening.
Keep in mind, trees are like drugs, right? And they are worth a lot more upstream, right? In other words, if you have a really high quality, some of these trees that they have out there, when you make chess pieces out of it and sell those things, this thing's worth a lot of money. It's like ivory, right? It's like drugs. Now, to the Indians, they're like, yeah, we got all these trees, millions and millions of trees,
What he's talking about, what he's seeing down there at the Darien Gap is they've created a couple bridges that are very wide. He said, of course, they could be, a tank could fit on these bridges that are coming through Panama. But he's trying to show that a lot of these trees are very valuable. And so they're probably making some systems that are going to be conducive to harvesting these trees. So that's what he's talking about as far as those trees are concerned.
$20, or for the more expensive ones, the Coca-Cola, $2,000 per ton. But again, downrange, once you get these things out on the ships where they make stuff out of them, or back to China or to the Middle East where people can use these things for furniture, those trees are worth a lot of money. So keep that in mind as you're building this highway through the Darien Gap. You're also building access to more of the trees. I've got somebody going down there today, actually finding the head of one of the trails where they're doing more logging this year. The dry season is just
How long have you said you've been going down there?
I started immediately after Biden was installed.
When Biden, about 3 years.
Yep, I was in Washington for the inauguration, and you saw how quickly they put up those trees, right? Not the trees. How quickly they put up those fences, right? Mm-hmm. So immediately, Chuck Holton and Masako Ganaha and I flew right to El Paso, because we thought that they would start flooding over the border and from Mexico to El Paso, and they were. And the Border Patrol's like, wow, he's only been in office for 48 hours, and were getting overwhelmed, and we were seeing it, right? And then we flew down to Colombia, and we went to the Darien Gap on the Colombian side. And then I started going to Panama constantly because I'm like, this is it. This is where they're going to run right up the middle. It's going to be. So I started spending a lot of time there, developing networks and situational awareness, figuring this out. Where are they going to build? Are they going to build a bridge here? Yeah, I thought they would. That's why I'm constantly reconning for the bridge. And they just started the bridge now. And I mean, not just a bridge, but a pathway to Colombia, right?
So where I'm going with this is, how much have you seen the infrastructure develop down there, especially when it comes to the Chinese side?
Oh, it must
in 3 years.
Okay. Now, for just the Darien Gap, for it's got to be based on what we saw in the last 2 weeks. I would say 5 times more.
What did you see when you first started going there?
When I first started going there, I went to a place called Bajo Chiquito, right? And keep in mind, it was not very open. I had to do the normal, make friends with the Indians and that sort of thing. I found the chief, Francisco, got to know him, and he's like, well, you should come to Bajo Chiquito. So it's just me. I'm out with the Indians all the time. So mostly for those about 6 months I've spent down there, it's been mostly me alone, basically setting conditions to bring people down. So you see all these journalists down there now like Ben Bergquam and Oscar Blue and Epoch Times and Brett.
See, this guy is heavily involved, getting down there, learning what's happening, and so that he can bring people down there to see this is what's happening. You need to see what's going on here. What a patriot this guy is, and balls of steel. What this guy has been doing going down there. But if you go to the Sean Ryan Show and check him out on that show, and he's just going to go, for 2 hours, he's going to give you really a master class on what's happening in the Darien Gap that really has to do with, how people are getting here, and they're using old spice routes to get up through South America and through there, and Panama, through the Panama, across the Panama Canal, and what's happening, and how people are flying in. The Chinese are going into Ecuador where they don't check passports, and then they get in to the jungles there, and they make it through, and they've increased the amount of buses. These people are in these tents, and they bus them. They're only there for maybe 24 hours before they're bused to New York or wherever they're sending them into the United States. But it's just an amazing system, and they have a network going on there. The Chinese have a network. They know what they're doing, and they're taking care of business as far as that. So check out the Sean Ryan Show, because that's going to be very enlightening to you. A lot of what I have been learning about has been, I'm going to recommend a book for you guys to get, and that's this book, Because They Hate. I had no idea. So Brigitte Gabriel is someone you got to check out. Check out her book. It's really, she talks about growing up in Lebanon. She talks about when Lebanon was like the America, and how, it was very thriving. They were very well off, very well to do. And her dad had a restaurant, and they had servants and everything else. And then something was going on in Jordan. And then Islamic people from Muslims from Jordan, they got pushed out, and they came. So they took them in Lebanon. And then they realized, wow, we're within striking distance of Israel. And then all went to hell, and her house was bombed, and she lived underground in the basement for a long time. And she became a journalist, going back and forth to Israel in a car where she was switching license plate. But she eventually got to America, and she loves this country. And now she has an organization called Act Up for America. And she just sees that is the biggest threat we have is radical Islamic terrorists. And she has seen it before. And so she knows in Lebanon, when she was growing up, they said it'll never happen here. And so she sees us saying that, well, that'll never happen here. And she sees these things happening. In 2006, in her book, she writes about how the money is coming into all the universities, and they're propagandizing all these students with these Muslim student associations. And she was on target, but she has put herself out there, and she has rallying everybody to stand up, join her organization. She backs the police. She has a whole Blue Line section of her ACT Up website, and they actually enact legislation trying to tackle what these groups are trying to do, and that's degrade American culture, citizenship, and the things that we need to stand up for now, because we see before our very eyes the very fight that we need to take up and make sure that we're taking care of ourselves, because as we can see, the government's been corrupt for a long time. So get her book, Because They Hate. Now I'm going to recommend another book that I am just about done with by Mr. Peter Schweitzer. I had no idea. It's called Blood Money, What China is Doing. And we see it. If you're paying attention, you will see what China is doing. Can you imagine? China is behind, and if you look into the history of why China would be motivated to be behind the moving of fentanyl into the United States, why would they be wanting to do that? During the Vietnam War, Americans were selling heroin to Chinese people for like $1. For what would be on the street in New York at the time would be $200. They were selling to Chinese for $1, and they got them hooked on heroin. And so this is kind of a vengeance thing for China, but they are constantly stealing from us intellectual property. They're constantly sending people over here, and you're going to learn the difference in the culture. For us, we grow up in the state, the government, we pay taxes, and the government does their job. We have CIA people. They do intelligence gathering and research, and they do whatever they do, secret mission stuff in protection of the country. But we allow them to do it. Well, in China, when you're born, you are beholden to the state. From the time you're born for eternity, you are beholden to the state. So when you come to America to learn, to get a student visa, you are still obligated to the state. You are still obligated to China to gather information, to send that information back. And China is in, and there's another book that's called Unrestricted Warfare, and that's why they realize, because of the oceans that are involved, it just doesn't make sense that they would ever be involved in an attack on us with soldiers and equipment. But unrestricted warfare, they know how to use other things, and they call it, when they use fentanyl to murder Americans. Can you imagine that they can murder 100,000, or what is it? How many 1,000 a day? 300? Like about 100,000 military age men a year. They kill with fentanyl without firing a shot. Why would they ever want to invade when they can do that without firing? They call it murdering with a borrowed knife. And that's what they're doing with fentanyl. They actually own in Mexico, they own a lot of ports. You got to read this stuff. You got to read this book, Blood Money. You learn they own a lot of ports, the shipping, and they have partnered with the Mexican cartels to move fentanyl into America. And the Mexican cartel, because of the amount of money they're getting, they are gladly taking a subservient position in the preparation and trafficking of fentanyl because it's so volatile, because they just don't like handling this crap, because it's so deadly that they don't want to deal with that. But they will partner up with China. You got to look at it from a drug dealer point of view. A drug dealer does not want to kill you. They want to get you hooked. That's why the Mexican cartel, they love to deal with marijuana, heroin, cocaine. They want to get you hooked. You're a permanent customer. China is dealing with fentanyl. It kills the user. And that's their purpose. And so they're all about that. And so that's a major war that we're in. And you got to realize what China is doing. That's why you'll hear about, and I talked on another podcast with one of my friends from the NYPD, a retired detective, and Vic Ferrari. And he says, man, he could attest that they do have these, they call them Chinese police stations in New York. And all they do is harass Chinese dissidents that should need to go back to China. They need to send money to China. They're wanted by China. And so they have a private police force within our borders to police Chinese. They're secret police agencies. And Vic, attested that that is the case, because a lot of these things to us seem unreal, that these things cannot be happening in America, and they are. Some things are just too crazy for us, for some of us who've been around a long time, to think this can't be possible, this can't be happening. And I was alluding to earlier about how I didn't grow up political. We didn't talk about politics. And I joined the Livingston County Sheriff's Department, upstate New York. We don't talk politics. Just do the right thing. Serve your country. Serve in law enforcement. Then I go out to the LA Sheriff's Department. And I meet my wife, and we talked about Mr. Suarez from Miami, and that my wife was born in Cuba. And then my wife says, "You're not voting?" "No, I'm not voting. It makes no difference. Who cares? It doesn't matter who's elected." And she goes, "You have the right to vote in this country, and you should be voting." And then I was thinking, man, maybe I should be voting. And so I got on board, not just with her, but with her father, who gave up everything. And we've talked about this in other podcasts, who signed over everything to the Cuban government so that he could come to that beacon of freedom, America, give up everything to a country that the Cubans love. They love Cuba. But what's more important than a country? It has to be freedom. Freedom trumps everything. And that's why second-generation Cubans, or anybody, look at Vivek Ramaswamy. He is a second-generation immigrant, and they know what great opportunity they have in this country, and they don't want to see it go away. And they see what's happening, and they say, wait a minute, that's communism, that's socialism. That never works. I saw that in the country that we fled, and we came here to make sure that that doesn't happen to us. And so they are the best patriots in my wife's family. Her and everyone in her family are proud patriot citizens. They did what they had to do to become citizens of this great country. And my father-in-law, every day, and when I say every day, I mean every day, he had an American flag somewhere. If it wasn't the shirt with the flag, it was a pin, a belt buckle, American flag, because he loved America. If he saw a picture of Ronald Reagan, or he saw a picture of him on TV, he would cry. He just loved Ronald Reagan, who stood up for what is right. And so read this book, Blood Money. I think you're going to like it. So I do vote now. I am involved. And so apolitical, but now none of us as proud citizens can just sit back. We've got to be, and that may even be just coming on a podcast, just spreading the word, maybe forwarding something. If you'll notice, everybody, including myself, we have gone away from mainstream media because we know the lies. And now we're getting our news from private people, independent people. And so we need to keep doing that, and it's important. So I know in my group that I talk to, my inner circle, and even the couple rings outside, and let's talk about 20, 25 people that I know that are proud patriots, Americans, citizens, and they have had enough. And believe me, what can we do is their mantra, and we're discussing these things of what's happening in the country with gender, just cut this off, and let's have surgery on these children who can't even make the decision to get a tattoo, but they're allowed to have their parts cut off, and people are just fed up with it. But they're not like me who has a podcast, but we have to be getting our voice out there. And so that's what I'm doing today. Please subscribe to the channel, everybody. It's going to help show it to more people, because it tells the computer that people are interacting. And that's why this show tonight, we had to do it. First few minutes, we had a little snafu. That's what happens when you go live and you're not scripted. Things can happen. I was muted for the first few minutes, but I'll be able to in the YouTube later on. Within 24 hours, I can cut off that first part and start right where my sound was on, everybody. You know, I'm going to end with this. I never knew, and before I even end with that, before I even end with that, we got to acknowledge, everybody, that it is National Police Week. And I think I have something here. Yeah, I have this, man. Okay, listen. It's National Police Week. And I had a little thing. But it's right over here. Let's go over here. Yeah, it's National Police Week, everybody. We're honoring our heroes. I talked about it at the front of the show, but I may have been muted, but so we're going to come back to it right now. Listen, 1962, John F. Kennedy made May 15th. It was the National Monument for fallen police officers, and he made that a national holiday. And this is actually National Police Week, and so we're going to honor our fallen brothers and sisters who still serve. How? I don't know. It's hard to recruit anybody anymore. They're having trouble. Forced overtime. It's even worse than ever before. So we've got to stand up for our men and women in blue, and we're going to do that. And I'm going to leave you with this because I never knew. I didn't know because I wasn't into politics. I didn't pay attention. I didn't even know I was conservative. I had no idea. I couldn't have told you whether I was Democrat or Republican. All I know is I like this guy. I like that guy. It's like in football. I like the guy. I like the guy or the gal. And it wasn't based on party. But then I found out, I am a conservative because I had to find out what happens, as we learn in our personal growth and our personal motivation and inspiration, that when we start asking empowering question, what's good about this? We're going through the circumstance. What is good about it? What can we learn from it? What can we do? What power do we have right now? And what can we do? And so when we're going through what we're going through in this country, and we can ask those empowering questions, then that's when we start to learn more. Oh, wait, was the country really based on Judeo-Christian values and principles? Oh, yes, it was. The propaganda is a lie. And so it makes us research. It makes us hold things up to the light. It makes us say maybe we have to bring God back into the country because it's been taken out. We remember a time in school when we sang patriotic songs. We remember a time in school where we stood up, put our hand over our heart, and we faced the flag. I still remember, I can hear the teacher saying, stand up and face the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And I only know that because I had to say it every day in school. And I don't even think they say that anymore. They don't say the Pledge of Allegiance. I'm going to start saying it myself. This is what we have to learn how to do. We have to ourselves do what we can as patriotic American citizens. So I thought, am I a conservative? I guess I always vote Republican. So what is a conservative and what are conservative values? And I looked up the 7 core principles of conservative values. Individual freedom. The birth of the United States was inspired by the declaration that individual, God-given liberties should be preserved against government intrusion. So this is what we believe as conservatives. Limited government. We believe in individual liberty to be championed. Government should be reduced. We need to be reduced the government hand that is taking over our states. Thank God our states are standing up for their individual power. We believe in the rule of law. This is where it's getting, they're protesting. No, burning is not protesting. Smashing out windows is not protesting. Peace through strength. Weakness promotes aggression and violence. Like the current president who promotes a vision of absolute weakness. We need strength. With strength, you'll have peace. Fiscal responsibility. Spending, you get in a certain number and you don't spend over that number. We do that with our family. Free markets. Entrepreneurship. We are free. We are free to make as much money as we want, to have as many businesses as we want. We still do. Take advantage of it. Do it. It's going to give you the power to be more positive to more people. You're going to be able to give more in charity. You're going to give more to the church. You're going to have more influence in preserving the core values of conservatives. And one of those is also human dignity. Even though the left, some of these radical Islamic terrorist people within our country will tell you that Republicans and conservatives do not care about human dignity. We do. You know it. I know it. Spread the word. Thanks for checking in today. We did a live show, special episode. If you're listening and or watching on the playback, still subscribe to the show and leave a comment, because I come back and I check them out and I will respond. As always, you know I love you. Subscribe to the show and you'll be notified when the next episode comes out.